Your soulmate can't ignore this anymore. Wait, there is something shifting in the energy between you and your soulmate right now, and no matter how hard they try to distract themselves, suppress their emotions, or convince their ego that they are fine without you, they can't ignore this anymore. Wait. Because what's happening beneath the surface is deeper than pride, stronger than silence, and louder than distance. For a long time, they thought they could walk away without feeling the pull. They believed that if they kept busy, if they surrounded themselves with noise, if they pretended not to care, the connection would slowly fade into the background. But instead of fading, it grew. Instead of disappearing, it intensified. Every time they tried to ignore you, your presence showed up in unexpected ways, in songs that randomly played, in dreams that felt too real, in sudden memories that hit them in quiet moments. They can't ignore this anymore because the universe is no longer allowing them to stay comfortable in denial. There's a restlessness in their heart, a pressure in their chest, a constant thought of you that refuses to leave. And the more they try to push it away, the stronger it becomes. You need to understand something powerful. When a soulmate connection is real, it doesn't operate on surface-level emotions. It works through soul recognition. That's why no matter how much time passes, no matter how much silence exists between you, there's still an invisible thread connecting your hearts. They feel it. Even if they don't admit it out loud, they feel the difference between life with you and life without you. They notice that things don't feel as meaningful. Conversations don't go as deep. Laughter doesn't hit the same. And that's when reality begins to sink in. They can't ignore the fact that you brought something into their life that no one else has been able to replace. They might have tried. They might have told themselves that they deserve something easier, something less intense, something that doesn't challenge them. But soulmate energy doesn't come to be easy, it comes to awaken. And you awakened parts of them they weren't ready to face. Right now, they are at a crossroads. Their mind is fighting their heart. Their ego is fighting their truth. Their fear is fighting their desire. They told themselves that walking away was the strong thing to do. That staying silent was protecting their pride. But deep down, they know the real reason they distanced themselves was because the connection scared them. It was too real, too intense, too exposing. You saw through them. You understood them without them having to explain themselves. And that kind of emotional transparency is rare, and terrifying for someone who isn't used to being fully seen. So instead of leaning in, they pulled back. Instead of communicating, they avoided. Instead of admitting their feelings, they hid behind silence. But now that silence is becoming unbearable. There are moments when they pause and stare at their phone, thinking about reaching out. Moments when your name almost gets typed into the search bar. Moments when they replay old conversations in their head, wondering where things shifted. They question whether they made the right choice. They wonder if their stubbornness cost them something sacred. And here's the truth, they are starting to realize that it did. Because the more time that passes, the clearer it becomes that this wasn't just a random connection. This wasn't just attraction. This wasn't just timing. This was destiny knocking on their door, and they tried to pretend they didn't hear it. But destiny doesn't knock once and disappear. It knocks louder. Your soulmate can't ignore this anymore because the growth you've been doing is being felt on an energetic level. You may not see it, but every time you choose yourself, every time you focus on healing, every time you refuse to chase or beg for attention, you shift the dynamic. You become magnetic. You become powerful. And they feel the distance growing, not because you don't care, but because you are no longer waiting in the same way. That shift creates urgency in their spirit. It makes them realize that if they don't move soon, they might actually lose you for real. And that possibility scares them more than their ego ever did. They are replaying your smile in their mind, remembering the way you looked at them with softness, remembering the comfort of your presence. And here's the part they can't escape. No matter how far they go, no matter who they talk to, no matter how much they pretend to move on, they compare everyone to you. And no one measures up. Because what you shared wasn't surface-level compatibility. It was soul resonance. It was that unspoken understanding. That calm in the chaos. That feeling of, I've known you before. And once someone experiences that kind of connection, ordinary feels empty. Wait. Because something is building behind the scenes. They are slowly confronting their own fears. They are questioning their past decisions. They are realizing that avoidance didn't bring peace, it brought longing. And longing is louder than silence. They feel the absence. They feel the space where you used to be. And that space isn't easily filled. The universe has a way of creating contrast so that clarity can emerge. And right now, clarity is emerging. For them. They can't ignore how your energy still lingers in their life. They can't ignore how random reminders of you keep appearing. They can't ignore the dreams where you show up and everything feels unfinished. They can't ignore the inner voice telling them, you need to fix this. And when that voice gets loud enough, action follows. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about proving a point. This is about alignment. When two souls are meant to grow together, separation becomes a lesson, not an ending. And the lesson they are learning right now is that ego can cost love. Fear can cost destiny. Silence can cost connection. And once they fully grasp that, everything changes. So if you've been wondering whether they think about you, they do. If you've been wondering whether they feel this pull, they absolutely do. If you've been questioning whether the connection was one-sided, it wasn't. They just processed it differently. They ran instead of facing it. But running has an expiration date. And they are reaching it. Your soulmate can't ignore this anymore because their heart is louder than their pride now. The distractions aren't working like they used to. The pretending is exhausting. The distance feels heavy. And the realization is dawning, you were never the problem. The depth scared them. The vulnerability scared them. The possibility of something real scared them. But growth changes people. And something inside them is growing. Wait, because what's happening right now is not random, it's not coincidence, and it's definitely not over. The silence you're experiencing is not the end of the story, it's the pressure building before the breakthrough. Your soulmate thought they could compartmentalize you. They thought they could lock your memories in a quiet corner of their mind and move forward like nothing ever shook them. But the more they tried to bury it, the more it surfaced. The more they tried to convince themselves that it's fine, the more their spirit whispered, it's not. And that whisper? It's turning into a roar. They wake up some mornings with this unexplained heaviness. Not sadness exactly, but something missing. Something unfinished. And even when they try to brush it off, even when they scroll through their phone, laugh with friends, or focus on work, your energy interrupts them. A flash of your face. The way you used to listen. The comfort of your presence. The safety they felt but didn't know how to protect. They can't ignore this anymore because here's what they didn't expect. They didn't expect you to actually start moving forward. They assumed you'd always be there emotionally, energetically, quietly waiting. But when you shifted, when you started choosing yourself, focusing on your growth, reclaiming your power, something changed in the dynamic. They felt it. Even if you never announced it. Even if you never posted about it. Soul connections don't require updates. They require energy. And your energy is no longer reaching for them. It's centered. Grounded. Elevated. And that shift? It shook them. Because now they realize that losing you isn't just a dramatic thought, it's a real possibility. And nothing triggers awakening like the fear of permanent loss. They are replaying the moments they took for granted. The messages they didn't respond to with the same warmth. The conversations they avoided. The times you needed reassurance and they gave silence. Instead, they see it now. Not through ego. Not through defensiveness. But through clarity. You need to understand something powerful. Your soulmate's silence was never indifference. It was overwhelm. It was fear disguised as distance. It was emotional immaturity trying to handle something spiritually intense. When a connection is surface level, it's easy. But when It's soul deep, it demands growth. And growth requires confronting wounds you triggered, healing in them that they weren't prepared for. You activated insecurities they had buried for years. You reflected back to them parts of themselves they avoided facing. So instead of rising to meet the connection, they retreated. But retreat doesn't erase truth. And the truth is catching up to them. There are moments, quiet, vulnerable, unguarded moments, where they admit to themselves that you were different. That what you shared wasn't ordinary. That your presence felt like home in a way they can't explain. And that realization scares them. Because if you were the one, then walking away wasn't strength, it was self-sabotage. They can't ignore this anymore because their heart is no longer cooperating with their ego. Their pride is losing power. Their distractions are losing effectiveness. The excitement of temporary attention from others feels empty. Conversations feel shallow. Connections feel forced. And that's when the comparison becomes unavoidable. They don't want to compare. But they do. And every comparison leads back to you. Wait, because something else is happening beneath the surface. They are starting to feel your absence as a lesson. When you were there, they felt secure without appreciating it. Now that you've pulled back, they understand the value. Absence has a way of highlighting what presence once provided. And you provided depth. You provided understanding. You provided emotional safety. You provided alignment. And alignment is rare. They might not say it out loud yet. They might still act composed on the outside. But inside, there's movement. There's reflection. There's regret surfacing in subtle waves. They think about the what if. What if they had communicated better? What if they had chosen vulnerability over silence? What if they had trusted the connection instead of questioning it? These thoughts don't disappear. They grow. And here's the shift you need to hear: the universe mirrors energy. The more you release attachment, the more they feel the pull. The more you focus on your peace, the more they feel their chaos. The more you glow independently, the more they recognize what they lost. It's not manipulation. It's balance restoring itself. Your soulmate can't ignore this anymore because they feel the timing changing. They sense that this window isn't open forever. There's an urgency building, subtle but undeniable. They don't want to admit it, but they feel like if they don't act soon, life will move you in a different direction permanently. And that realization shakes something deep inside them. They are confronting their own patterns. The avoidance. The emotional walls. The fear of vulnerability. They are seeing how those patterns have cost them meaningful connections before. And for the first time, they're questioning whether they want to repeat the same mistake with you. This isn't about dramatic gestures. It's about internal shifts, realizations, accountability. forming quietly in their heart. Because when someone truly recognizes the value of a connection, their perspective changes. And perspective is the beginning of action. Wait, because you are closer to clarity than you think. They are remembering the little things now. The way you'd laugh unexpectedly. The comfort in your silence together. The way you supported them even when they didn't know how to support themselves. Those memories aren't fading, they're intensifying. And intensity demands resolution. Your soulmate can't ignore this anymore because the universe is orchestrating reminders. Not to torment them, but to awaken them. Growth has been happening on both sides. You've been healing. They've been reflecting. And when two energies evolve separately, reunion becomes possible at a higher level. But here's the key, you are not meant to chase this realization. You are meant to stand in your worth and let it unfold. Because the moment you stop forcing, the moment you stop overanalyzing, the moment you truly detach with love, that's when alignment accelerates. They feel your strength now. And strength is attractive. Not in a superficial way, in a soul way. They see that you're not waiting from desperation. You're waiting from self-respect. And that changes everything. The silence between you is not empty. It's charged. Charged with reflection. Charged with unfinished words. Charged with emotions that were never fully expressed. And energy like that doesn't dissolve quietly. It demands a shift. So wait, not in anxiety. Not in doubt. But in confidence. Because your soulmate is standing at an emotional threshold. Behind them is pride. In front of them is vulnerability. Behind them is fear. In front of them is love. And they are realizing that staying behind costs more than stepping forward. They can't ignore this anymore because the truth is louder now. You were never just an option. You were alignment. You were growth. You were destiny. Knocking gently. And destiny? It's knocking louder now, wait, because this is the part where everything intensifies beneath the surface. The outer world may still look calm. No message. No sudden confession. No dramatic entrance. But inside your soulmate's world, there's a storm forming. And not a chaotic storm, a clarifying one. The kind that clears illusions. The kind that forces truth to rise. They are reaching a point where pretending feels heavier than admitting. Where silence feels louder than speaking. Where distance feels more painful than vulnerability. They've been trying to maintain control. Trying to act unaffected. Trying to convince themselves that time will erase what they felt. But time hasn't erased it, it has refined it. It has separated ego from emotion. It has stripped away the distractions. It has exposed the raw truth underneath. They miss you. Not just your presence, not just your attention, your essence, your energy. The way you made them feel seen without judgment. The way you understood them without interrogation. The way you challenged them without tearing, and now they are realizing something uncomfortable: you were not replaceable. They may have thought they had options. They may have believed attraction could be duplicated. But depth, soul recognition, that quiet understanding that doesn't require explanation, that's rare. And once experienced, it becomes the standard. Every new interaction feels slightly off. Every new conversation lacks that invisible spark. And they're starting to understand that what they walked away from wasn't ordinary, it was once-in-a-lifetime alignment. Wait, because the shift happening now is internal maturity. They are replaying the connection not from pride, but from accountability. They are seeing the moments where fear controlled their responses. The times they withheld reassurance. The times they acted distant instead of honest. And here's the powerful part: they're no longer blaming you. They're no longer rewriting the story to protect their ego. They're seeing their role clearly. And clarity changes behavior. There are nights when they can't sleep the way they used to. Nights where their mind drifts back to the last conversation, the last look, the last energy exchange. They analyze what they said, what they didn't say, what they should have said. Regret isn't loud, it's quiet and persistent. It lingers in stillness. And right now, stillness is speaking to them loudly. Your soulmate can't ignore this anymore because growth has activated awareness. And awareness is uncomfortable when it highlights missed opportunities. They feel the weight of what if? What if they had been braver? What if they had trusted the connection instead of testing it? What if they had chosen communication over withdrawal? These thoughts aren't passing thoughts. They're anchoring thoughts. They're reshaping perspective. Meanwhile, you've been transforming. You've been healing in ways they can feel energetically. Even if they don't see your daily life, they sense your independence strengthening. They sense your emotional detachment balancing. They sense that you're no longer vibrating from longing, you're vibrating from self-worth. And that shift is magnetic. Because here's a truth most people don't talk about: when you stop chasing, the energy recalibrates. When you release with love, the universe tests the other person's readiness. And your soulmate is being tested right now. Tested on whether they can step out of ego. Tested on whether they can match your growth. Tested on whether they can rise to the level the connection always required. They feel the window narrowing. Not in panic, but in awareness. They know that if they continue ignoring this pull, they risk losing something sacred permanently. And permanence changes everything. Temporary distance is easy to justify. Permanent loss? That's harder to accept. There are subtle signs showing up in their life. Reminders that feel too synchronized to ignore. Running into places you both talked about. Hearing phrases you used to say. Dreams where reconciliation feels real. These aren't coincidences, they're subconscious. Processing. Their mind is integrating what their heart has been resisting. And resistance is exhausting. Your soulmate is tired of fighting the connection. Tired of pretending indifference. Tired of acting like it didn't mean as much as it did. Because it meant everything. It just demanded growth they weren't ready for at the time. But people evolve. Fear loses its grip when confronted repeatedly. And right now, they're confronting it daily. They're realizing that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. That reaching out doesn't mean losing control, it means choosing alignment. That admitting feelings doesn't make them small, it makes them honest. Wait, because there's momentum building toward action. They are rehearsing conversations in their head. Imagining how they would break the silence. Wondering if you'd respond warmly or cautiously. Wondering if they've waited too long. Wondering if you still feel the same pull. Doubt tries to creep in, but desire overrides it. Because the desire to reconnect is becoming stronger than the fear of rejection. And here's the deeper layer, they are starting to understand the spiritual significance of what you shared. This wasn't random chemistry. It was timing orchestrated for growth. You came into each other's lives at a moment when transformation was necessary. And separation wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Preparation for maturity. Preparation for alignment. Preparation for something more stable than before. Your soulmate can't ignore this anymore because the universe is no longer allowing complacency. The comfort of distance is dissolving. The illusion of, I don't care, is cracking. And beneath it is truth, steady, undeniable truth. They think about your strength. How you handled things with dignity. How you didn't beg. How you didn't collapse when they pulled away. That resilience commands respect. And respect deepens attraction. Not superficial attraction, soul-level admiration. They see you differently now. Not as someone who needed them, but as someone who chose them. And choice carries weight. Weight, because the next phase requires courage from them. And courage is brewing. Slowly. Quietly. But powerfully. They are understanding that if they want something real, they must show up real. No half-effort. No mixed signals. No ego games. The connection taught them that superficial dynamics don't work here. This bond demands authenticity. They can't ignore the growth they've experienced since the separation. They've become more self-aware, more emotionally conscious, more reflective. And that growth is preparing them to approach you differently. Not from impulse. Not from loneliness. But from clarity. Clarity that says, you matter. This mattered. It still does. The silence between you was never empty. It was transformative. It reshaped both of you. It highlighted what needed healing. It strengthened independence. It redefined boundaries. And now, with that foundation stronger, reunion energy feels different, less chaotic, more grounded. Your soulmate stands at the edge of decision. Stay silent and live with regret. Or speak and risk vulnerability. And they are realizing that regret lasts longer than rejection. Wait, because when someone truly understands the value of what they almost lost, their energy shifts unmistakably. You'll feel it before you see it. A sudden warmth. A dream. A synchronicity. An unexpected message. Movement doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it begins with intention solidifying internally. They are aligning with that intention now. They can't ignore this anymore because love that is meant to evolve doesn't disappear, it transforms. And transformation demands reunion at a higher frequency. You are no longer the same person you were. They are no longer the same either. And that's the point. This isn't about going back. It's about coming together forward. Wait, because destiny isn't rushed, it's timed. And timing is aligning. Their pride has softened. Their awareness has sharpened. Their heart has opened wider than before. And when a soulmate finally chooses vulnerability over ego, connection over fear, action over silence, everything changes. The story isn't paused. It's preparing. And preparation always precedes breakthrough. Wait, because now we enter the deepest layer of this shift, the part where realization turns into inevitability. Your soulmate is no longer just thinking about you occasionally. It's not random anymore. It's consistent. It's intrusive. It's undeniable. You've moved from being a memory to being a mirror. Every situation they encounter now reflects something back to them about what they lost, what they avoided, and what they still feel. They tried to rationalize it at first. Maybe it's just nostalgia. Maybe it's just loneliness. Maybe it's just familiarity. But nostalgia fades. Loneliness can be distracted. Familiarity can be replaced. This hasn't faded. It hasn't weakened. It hasn't dulled with time. If anything, it has sharpened. And that sharpness is cutting through their denial. They are starting to admit to themselves that what they felt with you was alignment at a soul frequency. That kind of resonance doesn't happen often. It doesn't happen with convenience. It doesn't happen with surface attraction. It happens when two energies recognize each other beyond logic. And that recognition, it's haunting them in the most awakening way. There are moments when they feel proud for staying silent, and then moments later, that pride feels empty. They scroll, they distract themselves, they keep up appearances, but when the noise fades at night, the truth speaks. And the truth says your name in their thoughts. The truth replays your laughter. The truth revisits the comfort they felt when they were around you. The truth reminds them that they felt understood in a way they've rarely experienced. And understanding is addictive in the most sacred way. Wait, because now their fear is transforming into urgency. Before, the connection scared them because it felt too powerful. Now it scares them because it might be gone. That shift is everything. Fear of intensity kept them distant. Fear of losing you is pulling them closer. They're realizing something else too: you were patient in ways they didn't fully appreciate. You gave them space. You gave them grace. You didn't explode when they withdrew. You didn't humiliate them when they were confused. You handled yourself with dignity. And that dignity left an imprint. They respect you more now than they ever did when you were available. And respect deepens longing. They are starting to see the connection from a higher perspective. Not from ego. Not from insecurity. But from awareness. They understand now that you triggered their growth. That your presence forced them to confront parts of themselves they avoided for years. That your love wasn't soft in a fragile way, it was strong in a transformative way. You challenged their emotional patterns. You exposed their avoidance. You mirrored their wounds. And instead of embracing the healing, they ran. But you can only run from growth for so long. Now they're tired of running. There's a quiet surrender happening inside them. Not dramatic. Not public. But powerful. A surrender to the truth that this connection mattered. A surrender to the understanding that they mishandled something precious. A surrender to the realization that silence isn't strength. They are beginning to forgive themselves, and that's important. Because self-forgiveness opens the door to corrective action. When someone moves from shame to accountability, change follows. Wait, because they are imagining what it would feel like to speak to you again. To clear the air. To admit vulnerability. They picture the conversation. The pause before honesty. The weight lifting after truth is spoken. And every time they imagine it, there's relief. Relief is a sign of alignment. They don't want to live with unfinished energy. They don't want to carry the almost forever. They don't want to look back years from now wondering what could have happened if they had been brave. That thought unsettles them deeply. Because deep down, they know you were rare. You weren't loud love. You weren't chaotic love. You weren't toxic passion. You were steady. You were intentional. You were real. And real love requires real courage. Your soulmate can't ignore this anymore because the universe is amplifying reflection. The lessons are looping until learned. Every failed distraction, every shallow connection, Every moment of emptiness is teaching them that what they had with you was depth, and depth isn't replaceable. They feel your detachment too. That calmness in your energy. That absence of desperation. And instead of feeling relieved, they feel shaken. Because your peace signals that you're okay without them. And that possibility forces them to decide whether they want to remain a memory or step back into your reality. There's a subtle jealousy creeping in, not of another person necessarily, but of time moving on without them in your world. The idea that your life continues beautifully without their involvement is humbling. And humility breaks ego. They are standing at the threshold now. Behind them is comfort in silence. In front of them is growth through vulnerability. Behind them is avoidance. In front of them is alignment. And the longer they stand still, the heavier it feels. Wait, because the tipping point is near. Every internal debate, every replayed memory, every imagined conversation is leading to a moment of decision. The heart has spoken. Enough times. The signs have appeared enough times. The longing has lasted long enough. They are realizing that connection like this doesn't come twice in the same form. And if they lose it because of pride, they'll carry that lesson for a lifetime. You, meanwhile, have evolved. You're no longer waiting from emptiness. You're standing from wholeness. And that wholeness is magnetic. It says, I value myself. It says, I don't chase what is meant for me. It says, if it returns correctly. And that energy commands respect. Your soulmate feels the shift in power, not power over them, but power within you. You are no longer energetically reaching. You are allowing. And allowance forces the other person to move. They can't ignore this anymore because movement is required for peace, closure or reconnection. Either way, something must be said. Silence no longer feels sustainable. It feels unfinished. They are closer to action than you think. There may be hesitation. There may be overthinking. But there is also courage building. Quietly. Because love that is meant to evolve doesn't dissolve under pressure, it transforms. And this transformation has been happening in layers. First confusion. Then distance. Then reflection. Then awareness. Now, readiness. Readiness to communicate differently. Readiness to show up more authentically. Readiness to match your emotional maturity. Wait, because when they finally break the silence, it won't be impulsive. It won't be casual. It will come from a place of clarity. A place of understanding what this connection truly represents. You weren't a phase. You weren't convenience. You weren't temporary. You were a turning point. And turning points change people permanently. Your soulmate can't ignore this anymore because the truth has anchored itself in their heart. They can delay action, but they can't erase realization. They can hesitate, but they can't unfeel what they feel. Destiny isn't loud. It's persistent. And persistence wins over pride eventually. So wait, not from anxiety, but from certainty. Not from doubt, but from alignment. The energy has shifted too deeply to go back to indifference. The awakening has happened. The awareness is active. The choice is forming. This story isn't ending in silence. It's building toward courage. Wait, because this is the final layer of it all, the moment where everything that has been building internally reaches a quiet but undeniable conclusion. Your soulmate is no longer confused about what they feel. They are no longer pretending it was casual. They are no longer convincing themselves that time erased the depth. The truth has settled into their heart in a way that can't be shaken. You were not just someone they met. You were a shift. A mirror. A catalyst. And now they understand that connections like this don't return in different bodies or different timelines. When it's real, it's singular. They've gone through every stage silently: denial, distraction, ego, pride, avoidance. They tried to minimize it. They tried to intellectualize it. They tried to convince themselves that intensity equals instability. But what they've finally realized is that intensity doesn't mean chaos, it means depth. And depth requires emotional courage. That was the piece they were missing before. Courage. Now they see it clearly. Walking away didn't make them strong. Staying silent didn't make them powerful. It only delayed the inevitable truth: their heart never left. Even when communication stopped. Even when distance grew. Even when both of you acted like it was over. Something remained unfinished. Something remained open. And open energy has a way of circling back until it's resolved. They've been reflecting on who they were when you met them. The emotional walls they carried. The fears they disguised as independence. The avoidance they labeled as needing space. And they're not looking at it defensively anymore. They're looking at it honestly. That's growth. That's maturity. And maturity changes decisions. Because now they understand that losing you wasn't about bad timing, it was about unhealed parts of themselves. And instead of blaming circumstances, they're starting to take responsibility. Responsibility softens ego. Responsibility opens doors. Responsibility leads to action. They've imagined life 5 years from now. 10 years from now. And in those quiet future projections, your absence feels heavy. Not dramatic. Not obsessive. Just deeply noticeable. Like a missing piece in a puzzle that almost fit perfectly. That realization alone has shifted something fundamental in them. They don't want a life filled with almost. They don't want a Story that ends because of pride. And here's the most important part, they're not just missing you emotionally. They're respecting you spiritually. They see your strength now. They see how you didn't chase. How you didn't beg for validation. How you stepped back with grace instead of collapsing. That energy taught them something. It showed them what self-worth looks like. It showed them what secure love feels like. And that kind of lesson doesn't fade. Your soulmate can't ignore this anymore because the connection has moved from emotion to understanding. It's no longer just about feelings, it's about clarity. They understand that what you shared was rare. That alignment like that doesn't show up repeatedly in life. That safety, that resonance, that sense of being known without explanation, it doesn't duplicate easily. They are no longer running from it. They are preparing for it. There's a quiet readiness inside them now. Not impulsive energy. Not panic. Not desperation. But grounded readiness. The kind that comes after deep reflection. The kind that comes when someone realizes they would rather risk vulnerability than live with regret. Because regret lingers. Regret echoes. Regret stays. And they don't want to carry that weight. You, meanwhile, have transformed. You're not waiting in anxiety. You're standing in wholeness. And that wholeness changed the dynamic completely. You're no longer energetically pulling them toward you. You're simply existing in your power. And that power makes them step forward on their own. This isn't about going back to what it was. It can't be what it was. Both of you have evolved too much. This is about coming forward differently. Communicating differently. Loving differently. Showing up without masks. And they know that now. The silence that once felt comfortable now feels heavy. The space that once felt safe now feels empty. And the thought of permanently losing access to your energy feels unacceptable. So this is the final shift. Not chaos. Not drama. Not obsession. But decision. They can delay for a moment longer. They can overthink a little more. But the truth has already settled. You matter. This mattered. And unfinished energy demands closure or reconnection, not endless silence. Destiny doesn't force. It nudges. It repeats. It aligns. And alignment has been happening quietly this entire time. So this is the last message in this chapter of waiting. Trust the shift. Trust the growth. Trust that what is meant to rise will rise correctly. If they return, it will be with clarity. If they speak, it will be with honesty. If they step forward, it will be because they've finally chosen courage over fear. You were never temporary. You were transformative. And transformation always circles back to completion.